interchange of ideas, get to find out what we're all passionate about, have a little fun, learn a little bit more about each other, and just gather together and have the intellectual side to Not Ephemeral. So we have a nice full speaker program for today.
Wow.
We're keeping people to 5 minutes, unless everyone's totally enthralled and wants to go a little bit longer.
So that's like
but we've got a lot of people to go through. We don't want to be here after sunset. So we're going to go ahead and get started and keep things moving.
We can always cycle back. We can have a queue of repeats.
Want me to hold it?
We'll slip it in here under the podium.
You might fly away.
Yeah. It's windy enough. Iveta can be the schedule bearer.
I'll hold it up every few minutes.
Yeah.
I'll be
Sounds
like
good.
the girl in the boxing.
All right, may I present our first speaker, the glorious Erin Rapacki.
Woo! Okay, what's my opening comment here? My talk is about how to catalyze the robot Uprising. And what I mean by this is science fiction writers have been writing about us building mechanical and artificial versions of ourselves for the past 50 or 60 years. And up until a few months ago, I was like, no, this will never happen. This is impossible. This is too complex. I can't believe all these researchers are wasting so much time on this one little vision problem, this one little manipulation problem, this one little human-robot interaction problem. And as I'm reading these research papers, everything is so focused, and I'm like, how the hell is all this going to come together? A paper might be having a single gripper be able to visually, grasp an object. Except what the paper then goes on and tells you is they're completely using fiducials and images and things that already exist. Like, they're mostly cheating in most research papers. And I listened to Ray Kurzweil speak at MIT once, and I'm like, after I listened to that talk, he argued for AI. After I listened to that talk, I was like, AI is never going to exist. Because after it does exist, then it turns into a perception problem of, does a monkey have a brain? Well, I work at AnyBots right now, which does telepresence robots. And about a month ago, I flew back to Boston and went to talk to a bunch of my old robotics contacts from iRobot and Kiva and a few people I moved down to be professor positions. And I know, for example, I know that iRobot has shelved projects. I know they have mapping algorithms. I know they have things that get attached into UIs. That I'm like, whoa, wait a second. If these telepresence robots, which, who here wants a further explanation of what a telepresence robot is? Okay, have you seen the movie Avatar?
Yes.
It's exactly that, except it's not biological, it's a machine for now. You, from your laptop, if I were to give you a demo, you would open up your laptop, use your arrow keys, and conference with people, and the robot's in another location. So you could be working at your home, and you have a team, say, in New York City that you're always communicating with. Now you can drive around the office and talk to people, and be there, the robot's your proxy, and basically go somewhere at the click of a button and have more spontaneous interactions with people, and you're in control of what you see and you're in control of who you talk to. Unlike video conferencing where you kind of bolt into a wall. Bacon. So, I see a connection here. People have asked, well, can I make the proxy robot go to this office by itself? Why do I have to drive it there? And I'm like, wait a second. People have developed mapping algorithms to do this. This could be an application. And like, wait a second, augmented reality. I know people are working on facial recognition. What if the robot is now an augmented reality layer, and you can be more perceptive and engaged in your environment than you would be if you were there in person, because now you have this technical layer all around you. And so your proxy, unlike what you might want to do as a human, could be constantly communicating with other devices, and interacting, and get better perception of things. And think back to these research papers, for example, the mapping. Now this one mapping piece of the puzzle can start getting used in the telepresence robot space. Or maybe now this one facial recognition aspect can start getting used in the telepresence robot space. Or what if, because for example, I want the robot to know who I'm talking to and pull up all the emails that person has sent me in the past 2 weeks as an instant to-do list, talking points. Or to go further, what if I want this telepresence robot to be able to pick up something, but I don't want to have to directly drive it. So now this one arm aspect can start getting used. And so now all these hundreds of robotics conference papers which do not interrelate have the potential to interrelate and be used as applications on a telepresence robot. And over time, time this will evolve. So instead of doing something that like Willow Garage has done, and I kind of like what the framework is, but in my opinion, it's basically they're building an elephant and seeing what it does well. Their PR2 system. Now we can have more of a smartphone approach where you build a core platform that's meant for communication, and you build on layers and things into it and on top of it to make it easier to use. And I think over time this will evolve into that fully humanoid robot that these science fiction writers have always been talking about. And some of you are nodding, some of you are probably lost. But, and I think that's the only way to actually catalyze this kind of thing to actually exist, because if you're trying to wait for everything to work well before you put it together, it's never going to work well and it's going to cost a lot of money. But the ROI in having telepresence robot and then having things added that for it to be easier to use and can do more stuff for you, I mean, and have that accumulate over time, that always has an ROI, and it's always going to have money invested back into it, and it's going to evolve into something that could be a fully humanoid robot. So that's my 2 cents on that. Something I kind of pieced together in the past 2 months by talking to people. Any questions? I don't know how. I'm not a software person. It's up to me if I could just get a bunch of people to start working on an open architecture. What would the ideal architecture be for all this stuff?
What would the killer app be on the open architecture that would just gonna get hot shit?
I have no idea. For me, it's more the telepresence robot is a robot developer's kit. But you know when you buy it, you can at least communicate through it. And so right now, the robot design kits you buy, like the one Segway's selling with the with this French architecture on it, it does nothing until you program it to do something. And then as you start using the robot for communication, so exactly like the movie Avatar, now you can drive it around and be in another place. What else do you want to see? What else do you want to feel? What else do you want to pick up? And those can be added in piece by piece.
Will we be able to have sex with our tails?
Sure. I mean, we've talked about teledildonics thing quite frequently, or even drive it around some kind of brothel in Nevada. And you're what if you're in control of where the camera is? You'd be like, hey, do this. And you are directing them to do whatever you want.
Sign me up.
What's up?
Kind of taking a page from the fantasy world. I feel like they would start off kind of like familiars. These telepresence robots would start off as kind of like familiars. They would be autonomous for a bit, but then you'd have the option of kind of controlling and having extra.
Well, here's the parallel with the military robotics. So the EOD robots was people wanted direct control of them. And then the military started accepting certain things that were autonomous because it felt more like cruise control with them, almost supervised autonomy. And so 3 telepresence robot companies have announced this year, 2010. And I think that's not just a coincidence. There's certain things, people have been wanting this for the past 10 years, but now the internet and there's a broadband bandwidth to actually handle it. But people have liked the idea that they are in direct control on both sides. But people who are thinking a little ahead are I wish that this would drive itself. And I'm it could someday. But right now, there is an acceptance curve. It's already kind of hard to get someone to talk to a robot. So we're trying to make sure the brain understands that you're not talking to a robot, you're talking to the person who is using the robot. And right now, we're making sure we get that aspect correct. And once that's done correctly, they'll be more likely to accept things like autonomous driving, because they understand supervised like cruise control is. So it's an acceptance curve. We are all kind of predisposed to accepting something like this. Most of the world isn't. But we kind of want to make business travel obsolete. That's just the beginning, though. And once we add on applications and more autonomy, then there'll be more use cases, as far as I see.
One last question.
What are the 3 telepresence robot companies that have announced?
Anybots, Vigo, and Willow Garage. Willow actually kind of announced 2009, but we're all been in the past year or so. Huh? Vigo, they used to be called North End Technologies, out of Boston, and they announced in June at the Infocom conference in Vegas, and they're taking much more of a Polycom route towards marketing. They're doing it through a bunch of distributors who are always selling video conferencing systems, but they have a nicely well-thought product. They've been around for about 3 years. Okay. Huh?
There was a vehicle just left last week from Rome heading for Beijing.
What?
A driverless vehicle left Rome last week and was driving to Beijing, I think.
piece of robotics.
Cool.
All right.
All right. We're gonna tell you who's at like the